I'd like to first introduce the Reverend Dr. Kevin Gardner Sinclair of Broadway Baptist Church. He will lead us in an opening prayer and share some remarks.
Thank you, Mayor Greenberg. Thank you for your presence with us today. We gather here to grieve and to remember. Our Jewish siblings have a tradition on this first anniversary of a death they call the Yahrzeit. It's the Yiddish word for anniversary. They light a candle for 24 hours to remember the loss of a loved one. And so today we light not an open flame here in Metro Hall, but the flame in our hearts that will continue to burn. Will you join me in prayer? O God of love and life, on this day which lives in infamy in the imaginations of Louisvillians and our neighbors across Kentuckiana and the Commonwealth, we ask, O God, for your presence and peace which passes all understanding. We pray for the families of Josh Barrick, Dina Eckert, Tommy Elliott, Juliana Farmer, and Jim Tutt. May this first anniversary, this Yahrzeit, be one of the many mile markers on the path to healing as we continue to navigate life without the ones they love. We thank you, God, for the first responders and the survivors who were downtown at Ground Zero a year ago this day. We ask that you tend the trauma they endured, set free their minds, hearts, and bodies to be healed, so that they may remember without reliving the darkness of that day. Gracious God, called by many names, may this moment move us towards justice and compassion, so that senseless violence is no longer an expectation baked into American society, but liberate us from our obsession with weapons of warfare and set us free from the fear that forces us to believe that taller walls and stronger weapons will ever make us truly safe. So may the crucified and resurrected Jesus' invitation to walk us in the way of peace, may that stir all people of faith and of no religious conviction specifically. May we all be stirred to commitment, to nonviolence, and to justice. Help us hear your still small voice inside our hearts, O God, and find true courage in each other and in you. We offer these prayers in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to everyone for joining us here today. It means a lot to our city that we have this opportunity to gather. And I know it means a lot to the families who are here with us today, to the survivors who are here with us today. It is a difficult day for many, and being together is so helpful. I want to give a particular thanks to several of the family members of those who we lost a year ago today who are here. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Monessa, for joining us. We're glad to see you. And I want to offer our love and our support to you and to all of the families who lost someone that day. Several of the families told us that they are commemorating this day privately by themselves and with their family. We understand that, we respect that, and we support them. We support all of the families, all of the friends, everyone in our city on this difficult day. Anniversaries like this are when people around our community and beyond take a moment to remember the people that we lost and the moment that we lost them. Of course, the people who knew them and loved them, their absence is felt daily. And that's true for me also. I had the good fortune to know Deanna as an acquaintance and Tommy as an incredibly close friend. I still think about Tommy every day. And I try to relive the wonderful moments that we spent together. And then I'm also drawn back to that awful, awful moment when I learned that we'd lost him and we'd lost Juliana, Jim, Josh, and Deanna. And 1 year later, those memories have left me with two profound feelings. One of those feelings is gratitude. In this room today that we all join in, there is so much love, and I am so grateful for that, and for the incredible outpouring amount of love and care that we saw in the moments following that tragedy a year ago today. I'm also incredibly grateful that I had a great friend like Tommy, even if our time was cut short. He was a loyal, supportive, creative, and fun friend to have. And I'm grateful for the fact that Tommy and the other people that we're here to honor were such good people. They were such good family people, such good members of our community who contributed in so many ways. They were people who deserved to be remembered not for how they died, but for how they lived. And I also feel gratitude beyond words for our first responders, our 911 call takers, our emergency services teams, and our healthcare heroes at U of L Hospital who saved several folks that day and do every day. And in particular, I want to thank the men and the women of LMPD, like officers Corey Galloway and Nicholas Wilt. They and their colleagues answered the call immediately, put themselves in danger to save others, and prevented that day from becoming an even greater tragedy. Thank you. And for Officer Wilt in particular, the courage that he showed that day as a new police officer, and the courage and determination that he has shown every day since in his recovery has been absolutely inspiring to me, to our city, and our entire country. And that's the other emotion that I feel strongly 1 year later, and that's determination. And my determination is fueled by frustration. We lost 5 people to violence at Old National Bank 1 year ago today, but those weren't the only people that we lost to violence in our city that day. There was a shooting, another shooting, as we all remember, just a few blocks away, a few hours later, that claimed the life of a young man, Shavon Moore. And we lost 2 more people in a mass shooting at Chickasaw Park just a few days later. And so far this year alone, we've lost 43 people to violence in our city, most of them to gun violence. There are also people in so many of these and other tragedies who survive, but who carry physical wounds, emotional scars, and oftentimes both. They'll carry those for the rest of their lives. Friends, there's a violence problem in our country, in our city, and I'm determined to do everything that our administration can, everything that our city can to address that issue and make it better. And that work can take a lot of different forms. It's things like hiring more police officers. It's intervention work with people who are on the path to violence. It's also long-term strategies, like expanding pre-K opportunities, because research is very clear. It shows that children who have high-quality preschool experiences are 70% less likely to be arrested for violent crimes later in life. So our administration is working to do all of that and more. And we want and we need even more than we are now, even more than now, to prevent more tragedies like this one we're here thinking about today from happening. I also want to thank Whitney Austin, a gun violence survivor, another gun violence survivor, I should say, for being here today. Whitney has been working in partnership with Metro government to promote gun safety through education, workshops, and advocacy efforts at the state and federal level. Whitney, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the moms who are demanding action and everyone else, because I too am frustrated by the limits on what we can do as a city to address this problem. So let's keep working together and with anyone else who will join us to get more help from our friends in Congress, more help from our friends in our state legislature. And that help can come in many different forms. There are many different strategies that have been proven to work. So let's try something, because we all want the same thing. We all want to prevent need for ceremonies like this in the future. And we all want to spare as many families as possible the pain that these 5 families who are mourning today feel, and far too many others around our city and our state. Everyone can help improve our situation, and everyone's help in this work is appreciated. And that includes my friend Tommy, who in his own way is still helping me. Last week, I spoke at Simmons College of Kentucky on the anniversary of the tragic and violent death of Dr. Martin Luther King. As I was thinking about what I wanted to say at that event, I remembered back to a Sunday afternoon a couple of years ago when Tommy came over to my house and gave me a speech that Dr. King had given right here in Louisville in 1961. Dr. King's words that Tommy shared with me that day were just right for that occasion last week, and just right for this moment and for this work, to help us connect and better understand each other and find the answers that we need. Right here in Louisville, Dr. King said, quote, "I'm absolutely convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they are separated from each other. No greater tragedy can befall society than the attempt to live in monologue rather than dialogue." Thank you, Tommy, for sharing with me and now with all of us those powerful words from Dr. King. In honor of our friends and loved ones who we lost on April 10th, 2023, let's all live in dialogue. And in honor of those who we've lost to gun violence on too many other days in our city, in our state, in our country, let's all live in dialogue. Let's keep telling their stories. Let's keep working together, keep brainstorming, keep trying, keep talking, keep listening to each other. And as Mary Ann said to me this morning, let's keep leaning into light and goodness and love. We must keep doing all of this so that we can create a safer, a stronger, a healthier, and a more peaceful city, state, and country. Thank you all very much for being with here today, and thank you for joining us in this remembrance. Something else that I'm incredibly grateful for as a Kentuckian is for the partner and leadership of our governor. On that day, our governor showed the poise and strength that he's shown in crisis after crisis that has impacted our state. Even though on that day, our governor was also grieving for a close friend and colleagues that he lost. As always, Governor Beshear put his duties to the people of Kentucky first, and he led us through that tragic day, as he has so many other tragedies that have hit our Commonwealth. He has helped us get through that and lead our state to great prosperity. I am honored to introduce my good friend, our great governor, Governor Andy Beshear.
How do you start? I guess I'll start, and when I was sitting down here looking up at Craig, I thought maybe I should have worn a tie. But then I thought back to my, 15, 16, 18-year friendship with Tommy. And when it started, we were both wearing suits and ties. And by the end, I'd taken off the tie, and he was wearing pastel pants. So hopefully, Marianne, he'd forgive me today. 1 year ago today, our lives were changed forever by a senseless, unthinkable, brutal act of violence that has certainly hit me and so many of you at your core. It shook this community, and it shook our Commonwealth. That's the day we lost Josh, Juliana, Jim, Deanna, and Tommy. Fathers, mothers, grandparents, children, friends, each one a child of God. These are the irreplaceable Kentuckians taken far too soon and taken in a way that leaves maybe even stronger, more difficult scars to heal on you and on me. They were robbed of their chance to live the full life that they deserved. Looking back a year later, so many of us are left with questions, anger, sadness, and disbelief. In preparation for this day, I started doing interviews about 2 weeks ago, and I will admit I've been a wreck ever since. Remember, it's okay to not be okay. And I'll tell you, when it comes to this, I'm certainly not. Remember, there are people out there that love you, and that each of these individuals that we lost would want you to heal and find the help and the path that helps you get there. I know, because I knew one of these individuals really well and another one pretty well. And they would always put down anything that they were working on to be there for me and to be there for so many people in this room. So even in these tough times, remember that they want you to be well and do well. In the days following April 10th, I was often asked, how will we get through it? And my answer is still the same. We'll get through it together, and we will continue to deal with how it's made us feel and what we've lost together. I can't tell you there's ever a day, and I don't think there will, that we will be past it. I don't think there's a day that I will be. But hopefully, it can help us to do those right things, to be kind to each other, to realize every moment in life is precious. I mean, I remember the last time I saw Tommy, it was at the ACLU Fairness Dinner. The last text he sent me, which was right after. The last thing he ever tried to give me, which was a pair of Lululemon pants. Marianne, I love Tommy, but I'm not sure I can do that. I remember the last time we were at your house for dinner with Kim Schatzel on one of her first days here. Every single one of those moments I wish I could have back. And I wish I could have 3 or 4 or 5 times as many. And if there's something personally I've taken out of it, it's just trying to find a way to say yes. Your family wants to see you, yes. Your friends want you to spend extra time with them, absolutely. I mean, this life and its moments are just so precious. And I wish it didn't take the murder of this many great people to sometimes remind us of how important those moments can be. What I saw that day is what we often see after tragedy. Friends helping friends, strangers offering comfort, and this community and all of Kentucky coming together as one. In moments like this, I find, and I think we found, strength in each other, even in those darkest hours, that we would not walk alone. I remember that morning. I remember getting the very first text that said there's a shooting in downtown Louisville. Then I remember getting the text that had the address. And I knew that address. And I hoped it wasn't the one that I thought, and then I looked it up. We jumped in the car, and I won't tell you how fast the troopers drove. I've already pardoned them. But while we were going, I got the information of where the shooting occurred. And those being my bankers. And that being a building that I had an office in for a long time. I knew who'd be in it. I remember seeing David James and starting the question and him shaking his head. That's how I learned that I lost a really great friend. And then I remember doing one of the toughest things in my life, which is calling Mary Ann, because she deserved to know. This isn't supposed to happen to people. Certainly isn't supposed to happen to them and to their family members. But I am proud of how each person in this room has offered them love and support, kindness, grace, space when people have needed it. And try to just love these families as much as we can. I will tell you that it certainly tested every part of me, including my faith, which I think I said a couple days later was shaken but not broken. And I continue to believe with all my heart that while the body is mortal, the soul is eternal. And he's looking down on me right now and telling me I'm going too long. He would always tell me I was going too long. I'd tell him, Tommy, I'm just getting warmed up. I will also never forget the brave, heroic acts of the Louisville Metro Police Department. And Chief, I get it, y'all do them every day. But not every one is so personal to me as to this one, which meant I could actually feel the visceral emotion that I think so many other people do when they're worried that a loved one has been through this, and that I also feel the intense gratitude about the actions that day. You know, on one of the toughest days of my life, I also had some of the most incredible moments. I got to see two friends in the emergency room that had made it through. And let me tell you, that is an incredible feeling, even in the midst of tragedy. I remember Darren looking at me and saying, "Hey, boss," and making a couple jokes. I didn't realize at the time he was so hopped up on painkillers, he was making jokes. Laughing a little bit's the only way I get through this, so I hope you all understand. And then I remember Dennis walking in because I had mistakenly thought that we had lost Dennis that day. And getting to give a guy a big hug that you didn't believe or didn't know was alive is a special God moment that we were granted on that day. I want to thank everybody at U of L and in that hospital for fighting as hard as you did, and you did your best. And that's all anybody can be asked. I was with two families when they got updates. Both of them were difficult updates. I will admit I thought we were going to lose both of them during them. I remember sitting with Officer Wilt's family that day, and then all of his friends, everybody in LMPD and every other organization that had responded in the auditorium, and promising them that we, not me, we would pray every day for his recovery. And let me tell you, from that first update that I remember getting, Dr. Smith, the fact that Officer Wilt is still with us is an incredible statement on the care that he got at U of L Hospital, and it is a miracle of God. So thank you for your work. We talk about Officer Wilt, his bravery, and his sacrifice rightfully a lot, but I want to mention Officer Galloway too, charging into a hail of gunfire to save my friends. And had they not gotten there when they had, I know the situation would have been much worse. And I know that someone who goes through what these families have, these survivors, what Officer Galloway and Officer Wilt went through. Whether they're injured on the outside, there's certainly still scars on the inside, and I thank them for their incredible sacrifice. Last year, I had the honor of awarding Officer Wilt with the award for Kentuckian of the Year at the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Awards. And I'm not only grateful for him, I'm grateful for his family, who are helping to carry his sacrifice every day, who are helping to serve him and everyone that has been impacted in this situation in any way. It's not just them, it's everybody around them that feels that ripple effect and that impact, but it's everybody around them that helps pick them up and tell them that there's a way to move forward. I continue to pray for Officer Wilt's recovery. It's incredible to see what that young man has done, and he has an incredible family around him. We have countless emergency personnel to thank for their actions that day in a very dangerous situation. It's EMS, Emergency Management, Louisville Fire, the Kentucky State Police, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, the Louisville Field Division, and the FBI for their support. Let's give them a big round of applause for their great work. I've learned a lot about not just grief, but trauma in the last year. I've lost a friend to cancer that came on very quickly. I've lost a friend to suicide that came out of the blue, and I lost friends here that were taken from us in a senseless act of violence. Grief is tough. Sometimes an event like this feels like it was 10 years ago, sometimes it feels like it was 10 days ago, and sometimes it feels like it was 10 minutes ago. So please don't stop checking on the people that you love and that you care about, and those that we've promised to stand with and to walk with. It's not just a one-year promise. That is a lifetime guarantee. Just like we did a year ago, we are standing here today, standing with those families and standing with these individuals, lifting them up in prayer and offering our support. And as we pray for them, we pray for a better world. Now, I believe in a God who sent his Son with all the powers anyone could have ever imagined. He could have chosen to be the Prince of Power, but he chose to be the Prince of Peace, spending his time with the lost, the lonely, and the left behind, trying to teach us how to love each other and care for each other, even if we don't understand each other at all. And that's not just that faith. It's included in all faiths and all of our values. I hope we can find a way in this divided, crazy world where you're supposed to dislike your neighbor because a letter behind their name that they registered for when they were 18 that may or may not represent any of their individual views. I hope we can find a way to give each other the same type of grace and space and love that we see at moments like this. And I hope we can make progress regardless of the means so that things like this don't happen. We should not lose people to senseless acts of violence. And I hope that in the very least, we can come together with basic empathy. It shouldn't take sympathy. It shouldn't take being someone who lost their friend. Can it be enough to know that there are people out there that are grieving? And can't we find some way to talk about how we make it less likely that other people will be out there grieving? I want to thank my friends if I can. And my wife. And my kids, one of whom called me on my way here. He never calls me out of the blue. Well, now you know which one. Just to see if I was okay. And today I'm not. But with their love and support, I know that I will be. And that we all will be. My friend Tommy always used to say, keep the faith. That's right before he said, buzz me back. But he always said, keep the faith. And then he always said, what else should we be doing? So even if it doesn't work today or tomorrow, let's keep trying to find what else we should be doing. The families impacted, the people we've lost deserve, at the very least, our best effort. But I hope that everybody will take the time, the space they need to reach out for help if you need it. Our minds are not meant for this type of trauma, and it impacts our bodies as well. But thankfully, there are people out there that love you and care about you and are trained to help us get through traumas like this. This last year has taught me that life is short. Our job is to be kind to each other and to do good things. I think everybody up here whose picture's behind us lived that out. The ones that I didn't know, I have read, and I've grieved over the stories, including the one that I read today on Josh's widow. They are incredible people that give a testament to what true love is. And let's make sure we continue to support them, and for them, we make sure that we be kind to each other and do those good things. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor. As the Governor mentioned, we lose far too many people to senseless acts of violence. One reason why we don't lose more in this city is because of the amazing work of Dr. Smith and his team at U of L Healthcare. The work that they did on April 10th was amazing. The work that they do every day of the year is amazing. They are keeping people alive because of your efforts. Dr. Smith, thank you, and your entire team for everything that you do every day. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Chief Medical Officer for U of L Health, a wonderful trauma surgeon in his own right, and someone who helps truly keep people alive every day in our city, Dr. Jason Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Governor. Wonderful words today. So, I was talking earlier, and the remembrance of the day hits you at different times. And I had told the governor this, and I've told some of the family members and people that were there. It hit me this morning as I was walking through the operating rooms in room 9, which is our trauma resuscitation area. I was just walking through there. I've walked through those rooms 1,000 times since that day. But for whatever reason today, it triggered, and you remember it was a very different morning and a very different day a year ago. I say that, but I also noticed that it's the same group of people, and it's the same thing happening in those rooms today. The reason we save people, as much as I would like to say it's because of me, is not. I represent a simple cog in a machine that has been built and dedicated to serving this community for 100 years. Historically, the first ambulance service in this very town was a police officer, and they were trained to bring people to the hospital after injury. That was the first ambulance service. It may be the first ambulance service in the country, and it was tied to the police officers within this community deciding that was something they were going to do with the hospital at that time to save victims of injury. We've heard wonderful things today about the police officers, the EMS, the hospital system itself, and we are, in part and parcel, working together. We bring someone to us. The first victims did not arrive in an ambulance. The first victims arrived in the back of a police cruiser. And then the ambulance arrived, and then the hospital did what it did. The ED took care of the patients they needed to. The surgeons took care of the patients they needed to. Our neurosurgeons were there. We got them through the acute episode, and we turned them over to the rehab folks at Fraser Rehabilitation Institute, who do phenomenal work with injuries every single day, and who are still working with Officer Wiltz. You know, I tell people I get people out the door, but I don't let them walk out the door. People that walk out the door come from the rehabilitation services that are offered at that wonderful, wonderful place. It's a resource I don't think we talk enough about. That machine works because we drill and we train. We set up protocols, we talk to each other, and we converse. But The important part to remember is that each cog in that machine is a person. And so to all of those that were there that day, we all carry our own trauma. It felt different. We carry our own burdens, be that LMPD, be that Metro Fire, Metro EMS, U of L, any of the nurses or physicians that work there, our Rehabilitation Institute, Jewish Hospital. It's one of those things that you bring with you and will carry with you always. In our wonderful prayer to start the service, we talked about kindling a fire in our hearts in remembrance. And it's important for us to do that because several people paid the price on that day to light that fire. And it's important for us every day to remember that and to honor that and to use that fire to the betterment of our community, because every single cog in that machine, every single person does that job, not because it's easy, not because we get paid more than anyone else, because we don't. We do it because we want to serve the community that we live in. That's what we're here for. That's why the emergency department does what it does. That's why trauma surgery does what it does. That's why we are U of L Hospital and the Trauma Institute and EMS and Metro Fire and LMPD. They're not easy jobs. In the best of days, they are not easy jobs. But we know at the end of the day that we can make a difference in our community. So keep that fire in your heart that we have lit and that they have lit today, and use that as your own agency to make a difference in our communities. There are solutions to the gun violence problems that we are seeing every day. There are solutions to the violence that we see every day in our city. Make it your agency to find a way to help your community, whatever that is, to be a part of that solution. That's how we heal. And that's how we deal with the grief and the trauma that we all carry and feel every single day. It's an honor to be here today. It's an honor to see so many people. You know, Louisville is a very little big city, I tell folks. I'll be honest, one of the victims that morning's son used to coach my son when he was little. I had never met Dan before that day, but I knew Ryan, and Ryan knew Nathan, and Nathan's my son. That's what this means to us. And those connections happen in that city every single day. Every single day. So that's why we have to care for each other. We have to make sure that we are part of this solution, and we need to continue our efforts to make Louisville a better and a brighter place, one day at a time. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. On that tragic day of April 10th, the governor told about how we had heard some, what fortunately turned out to be incorrect news about our good friend Dennis Heisman. And that was one of the few positive moments, as you mentioned, Governor, of that day, when we both ran into Dennis at U of L Hospital. Well, at that moment when I turned a corner in the hospital and unexpectedly ran into Dennis, I also met for the first time his colleague, the CEO of Old National Bank, Jim Ryan. Not the place that you want to meet somebody, but we have shared a strong bond since. And Jim and the entire Old National team have shown such resilience, support for all of the survivors from that day, support for all of their colleagues throughout Old National Bank, and tremendous support and contributions to our city that you all have made in ways far outside the walls of Old National Bank. We thank you so much for you and your entire team and what you've done for our city since this tragic day, and we will continue to support you and your team for as long as we are around. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the CEO of Old National Bank, Jim Ryan.
1 year ago today, an unthinkable tragedy unfolded here in downtown Louisville. In the span of minutes, 5 of our Old National team members were lost forever. Josh Barrick, Dina Eckert, Tommy Elliott, Juliana Farmer, and Jim Tutt. These were extraordinary, loving, and gifted individuals, and we are here today to remember them, to celebrate their lives, which were filled with passion and marked by a true spirit of generosity. We are also gathered here as a community to demonstrate our love, care, and support for others who were impacted last April, including our Old National team members and 2 Louisville Metro police officers, Nick Wilt and Corey Galloway. I too want to acknowledge the entire Louisville Metropolitan Police Force, the University of Louisville Hospital Trauma Center, Governor Beshear, Mayor Greenberg, the FBI, the Louisville religious and mental health communities, the American Red Cross, and the countless other heroes. To all of you, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. On behalf of everyone at Old National, I also want to thank the entire community of Louisville for your prayers and your support. I want to acknowledge the overwhelming outreach we have received from individuals and organizations throughout the country. Your outpouring of love and care has helped strengthen us and sustain us, and we are so very grateful. To the loved ones of the 5 amazing individuals we lost in this tragedy, please know we will never forget. We will continue to embrace you and care for you. And we will be steadfast in honoring their memories. I also want to acknowledge the incredible, resilient members of our Old National family. Thank you for rallying in support of our Louisville family and for loving, caring for, and supporting one another over the last 12 months. I do have one request. I would like to close with one simple request. Please consider giving the gift of life by donating blood. In addition to honoring those impacted last April, your gift will enable our friends at the Red Cross to save lives throughout our great country. And lastly, please do everything in your power to continue to love one another, care for one another, and support one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim, and thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Let's continue to keep, as you said, Jim, let's keep this love alive. In the days ahead, each day of our year is the anniversary of other tragic losses of lives. And let's continue to keep this love alive, the support for one another, and help to make our city safer, stronger, healthier, and more peaceful. To close out this service today, I'd like to once again bring up Reverend Dr. Kevin Gardner Sinclair, who will then be followed by a closing song.
Let's just take a moment. If you're sitting down, please stand up for just 1 second. Just take a deep breath. Look around the room. Try to make eye contact with somebody. It's okay. It might feel weird at first. Hug or handshake somebody near you. And I want you to just for one moment with me, close your eyes and think about where you were a year ago today when you heard this news. Take a deep breath in your nose, out your mouth. Do it 2 more times. Allow yourself to remember and to feel. Now open your eyes. Let us be grateful that we are alive and here today. You may be seated. I'd like to begin by sharing these words from the Apostle Paul from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, starting in verse 13. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about those who have died, so that you may grieve, but not as those without hope. This is the word of the Lord from the Christian Testament. The Franciscan monk Richard Rohr writes that religion is for people who want to avoid hell, but spirituality is for people who have been through hell. And friends, we have been through hell in so many ways this past year. During this season, I've had the privilege of walking with my friend and church member Mary Ann Elliott, who lost her beloved husband Tommy a year ago today. And Mary Ann shared with me once that the grief journey is like an infinity symbol. It goes up, it goes down, but it is always in motion. The danger is, though, to be captured by cynicism, because cynicism tells us that tomorrow will look just like today. But this Eastertide season in my Christian tradition, our faith tradition, is rooted in the hope of crucifixion and resurrection, which are a promise that the worst thing is never the last thing. There is a poignancy to the particularity of this anniversary that is both indelible and unavoidable. It is indelible because it will mark us forever. This is one of those do you remember where you were when kind of moments. The JFK assassination, the 9/11 attacks, the shooting at Old National. It will stick with us forever, and it has made a mark on our life together. A Muslim friend of mine once told me that the root of all evil in the Islamic tradition is not pride or greed, but it is forgetfulness. And that is why our Muslim siblings pray the Salat prayer 5 times a day to remember their utter dependence on their Creator, because remembering itself is a sacred spiritual practice for all people, regardless of convictions or doubts. Memory will fade, but where you were in Louisville on Easter Monday, 2023, I bet you could tell me exactly where you were. I wonder where you went earlier when I asked you to close your eyes. This anniversary is also unavoidable because grief does not obey our orders and it does not conform to our calendars. When grief pops up, it demands to be heard, and it does not give you much advanced notice. My wife, Nora, who's with us here today, is a social worker and trauma therapist. She's taught me two things about trauma. One, that trauma is the sudden and radical realization that the world is not the way that you thought it was. There are big T traumas and there are little t traumas. She's also taught me that when there is grief and trauma in someone's life, that often anger can come out sideways. As she often says, the thing is never the thing. When you see somebody who cuts you off in traffic or blows up at the Kroger cashier, there's an unhealed hurt deeper in their story. The thing is not the thing. So we must be patient and gracious with each other as we feel our feelings, as we sit in our sorrow. As a wise chaplain in my church, the Reverend Mark Judd says, to get through grief, you've got to go through grief. So the question we ask ourselves today on this anniversary is the same question that the Hebrew prophet Elijah asks himself. What now? Since a preacher without a sacred text is just a pretext for an opinion, please allow me to share a reading from the Hebrew Bible, 1 Kings chapter 19. And at that place, Elijah came to a cave and spent the night there. And the Lord came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he answered, "I have been very passionate for you, God. But the people have forsaken your covenants, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." And God said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before me, for I am about to pass by." And there was a great wind, so strong that it split the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before God, but God was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. But after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a still, small voice. Like in our city, Elijah endured violence, loss, and terror. So what do you do when you have endured the worst thing imaginable? Well, as the old Louisville pastor Ken Chafin once would tell families in grief, when you don't know what to do what you know until you know what to do. When you don't know what to do what you know until you know what to do. When you don't know what to do, phone a friend. Take a walk, plant a garden, share a random act of kindness with a stranger. Call your representatives and vote. Cast a ballot for the future you believe is out there. Or if all you can do is just breathe, do what you know until you know what to do. So to you in this room in public service, I know you've tried. And I know you'll continue to try. And I just want you to hear someone say, "Fear not, don't stop," and to quote Tommy, keep the faith. Listen to that still small voice of justice and peace that is still speaking inside of you, and keep on asking, who out there? Are there others who might join in this journey to find justice and healing in our city? It's easy to be cynical. It's easy to buy into nihilism that ignores solutions and surrenders our problems. It is easier to bend the knee and just believe that 6,000 mass shootings a year in our country, quote, is what it is. It is just easier to surrender. And yet, here we are. I'm a pastor in this community, and for that I'm grateful. My wife and I moved here 5 years ago from Texas. But I'm also a concerned parent and a citizen of this great city. My 2 boys were born in U of L Hospital, one 3 years old and one 2 months old today. And when they get to kindergarten, they will be Jefferson County public school students, just like their mama and me were formed in our public school systems in Richardson and Houston, Texas. And what I want to know is, who do we choose to believe? Who do we choose to be? Do we choose to believe the voices of cynicism, or do we choose to listen to that still small voice? So in this moment of collective grief that is indelible and unavoidable, let us not bend the knee to idols of cynicism. Let us not convince ourselves that nothing can be done. Let's stand on our own 2 feet, steel our spines, and keep walking with faith towards a brighter future. We owe that to Josh, Dina, Tommy, Juliana, and Jim. We owe that to our children. We owe that to each other. Thank you. And may God's grace and peace be upon our beautiful, diverse, beloved community of Louisville and the Commonwealth. Will you join me in prayer? O God of love and life, may a spirit of peace and reconciliation and justice take root in this land. May the trauma and tragedy of this moment be seeds that might blossom into possibility and transformation, so that no child may have to go to school afraid, no person may have to walk into their workplace in fear for their life. That those who struggle with physical or mental illness might be tended and taken care of. May we be a city where the least of these are loved and cared for. And until that day, O God, help us to keep the faith and continue to listen to that still small voice inside. We pray all this in your holy name. Amen.